In the heart of Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, a disturbing reality lurks, hidden from plain sight, behind the gleaming facade of private schools. A fate of exploitation unfolds, leaving families shattered and dreams deterred. Meet Mrs. Victoria Shola, a dedicated mother, struggling to provide the best for her children. She enrolled them in one of FCT's private schools, hoping for quality education. However, her excitement is short-lived. The initial tuition fee was steep, but I thought it was worth it, Mrs. Onwushola recounted. Her voice laced with frustration, but then came the hidden charges, development fees, technology fees, extracurricular fees. Each term, new charges emerge, draining our resources, she laments.
And most times, the school authority will tell you there will be extra lessons, like this case of going to the lab, the computer science lab. They will collect the money for it. It's not as if it's for free. They will impute the money into the school fees. There's a breakdown for each of the activities being carried out in the school. And you find out that at the end of the day, just like I told you, mommy, there was no teacher available for this. So why do they need to collect this money from us as parents when they know that the economy of the country is so bad?
The removal of fuel subsidy has been a domino effect, and it has swept into everything. So now it will not be out of place for people to be dropping out of secondary schools. I know a couple parents, some on my street, some who are like acquaintances and all, who have had to withdraw their words from private schools and then take them to public schools. I have nothing against public schools. My senior secondary school 1 to 3 was a public school, and it was a fantastic public school. But when you're going to those places on purpose or with a singleness of heart, it is different from when economic realities is what is making you to make that change. And the economic reality right now of the country is not palatable. We cannot begin to tell ourselves crap. On the average, students who have to take transport to go to school has gone up outrageously. You say, you have to go to school, and your transport fare just went from like 250 naira for a one-way journey to about 1,500 for that same one-way journey. So just to go to school and back, you are now spending some 2,500. You don't have money for lunch. You've not paid your school fees. You've not changed your school uniforms. You've not bought school supplies. So it's a whole lot. It is a whole lot. But the honest truth is, the economy is in a downturn, and people are suffering the consequences for it. And it's so sad to see that the young ones, the ones who are supposed to be moving into the next generation and become leaders, are the ones that are taking the brunt of it. People from low income families, now maybe before it should be, you go to school in the morning, then afterwards you work some things. Now they can't go to school. You just get withdrawn, and you sit at home, and then you just all through the day while your counterparts in school are learning. So the implication is dire. It's really dire.
Join us as we examine issues of corruption affecting the standard of education in public schools in the Federal Capital Territory, Nigeria, at all levels of education, and the impact on the girl and boy child, people living with disabilities, women, and youth in general. Join Leaves on Worms on AD4 TV Radio, where government strategies on these critical areas and their impact on the lives of residents of the territory are x-rayed. Stay tuned on our channels weekly for this revealing program. program jointly produced by AD4 TV Radio and Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism and supported by MacArthur Foundation.
There are many other parents feeling the sting in their pockets, from very exorbitant prices on books to uniforms, crippling fees, arbitrary increases, and unexplained expenses.
As a parent, I'm not happy about it. Government should do everything possible to stop it. Are you getting me? Then everything should be spelled out in the bill or whatever. Because children can also take it to their parents, the schedule of what they are supposed to pay. And when you pay that, that is all. That should be the end. Not tomorrow one story or no, it's not encouraged, and it should not be.
When you talk of public school, it's just peanuts they will require from a child, but private school is something else. Most of the private schools is something else. Before the term runs out, you will now find out that you have spent even more than almost half of the school fees. They will tell you a computer lesson 2,000 and extra lesson, you know. Like now, my daughter comes back by 5 o'clock. I keep on wondering what is she even doing. They say they are having lesson, evening lesson. And at times I will look at her, I will say, oh my God, during our time we go to school and come back 1 o'clock we are at home. And still we are still graduates by the grace of God.
Extortion in secondary school, particularly the public schools. The public schools. That is one of the problems as well. The neglect, all right? What is going on now in our public sector, everyone wants to make it today. You find that even a teacher, as a result of what is happening, he wants to compare himself. He forgot that he has to impact, there is knowledge he has to impact. And as a result, the teacher may eventually, you see a situation where they say they have to bring, what's it called, Dettol and stuff like that, you know, disinfectants to maintain the sanitary areas and all. You know, do you understand what I'm saying? All these are, and they end up, sometimes they even have to buy tissue papers. In a situation where you have kids buying, like, each student coming in with 4 to 5 tissue paper, what are they going to do with 4 to 5 tissue paper? That means they're going to open up a warehouse in that school to have tissue paper or any of those disinfectants. So these are the kind of things, and in most cases they also have to pay some certain money that is not necessary. Okay, so the schools have to look into, school management board, UB and stuff like that have to look into all of this and correct the mistakes.
If you go to some houses, they have a shelf. Like that, if you have 3 children or 4 in primary school, it may surprise you that the next year your child that's in primary 4 or primary 3 will not use the books that his elder brother or her elder brother used. They keep changing books. And this thing is hitting, they're hitting parents below the bed. The cost of things, cost of living is too high. How can a parent, after buying book this year, the same book, they say they'll change 1 page or something. They change something. And it's happening in Abuja here. And if His Excellency, Barrister Nyesom Wike, if he knows about this thing, he will deal with them. He will deal with them. How can you be changing books every year? And parents will be something to go and buy. The one they bought this year, they will not use it next year. And they have children coming up. When we are in school, we can use our elder brothers' books throughout the primary school. Because if they are using, they are shifting that to us. And the burden is less or lesser to our parents. So government should do something. I'm begging the FCT minister and Minister of Education, they should look into the way schools change books, especially in secondary schools. It's not good.
During my own time, I can say that things are cheaper. You know, the way things are modeled in those days. Let me give you a typical examples. A parent can have 6 children and they use 1 textbook from, that's the first one. After using from primary 1, they pass to the second one, plus 1, until all of them finish second. When you enter primary 2, the first one will reserve for this thing. So that makes education cheaper in those days. But come these days, you notice that somebody in primary 1, the younger one cannot use the textbook again, because their provision is that he will write, that first one will use that one and write inside this book, making it useless. And this is another burden for the parents, for the next child. This is where education were cheaper then in those days than now.
For these parents, the schools appear to be more interested in making gains than in providing standard and genuine education for which they were established.
We have reduced education to the point that if you have money, you will have quality education. This is not the education that late Chief Obafemi Awolowo left behind. This is not the legacy of the standard education. Most people that are in the aims of leadership in the educational sector, in every position of leadership that has to do with the education, benefited from the benevolence of this great legend of the free education. But now, by virtue of their selfish interest, by virtue of greed, they have made education so expensive to the point that the poor cannot get quality education. Even the rich that has the money, the standard of education given to them is far expensive, and these children are not learning anything. All they learn is prosperity, all they learn is introduced to a lifestyle that will pollute their moral value. This is what we have reduced ourselves to as a nation.
Taking a look at education during my time, okay, I think 20 years back, or close to 25 years, I realized that what we have today, there is a lot of education has been more like, it's now a business venture, more like the professional learning that is supposed to be. There is a lot of influx of private-owned institutions or secondary schools. Private hands have all come into it, all right? They see it as a lucrative venture, and as a result, most of these public schools or public secondary schools that our kids used to attend, they tend to be lacking in a lot of infrastructure, okay? There is this kind of neglect in the public sector, in the public schools, as a result of most of these guys who owns private institutions or private secondary schools. They find themselves conniving with the public school organizations and all that to ridicule it more, so that on the other part they could be gaining, more entrances. And that is the problem we are having. Nigeria is such a place that if you're not careful, all right, I don't see anything wrong in public schools, if you ask me. I don't see anything wrong in public school, because in those days, public school is the pinnacle of education. But come to look at it today, private schools, private secondary schools, you see a situation where eventually when your child, you move your child to a private institution or private secondary school, it's very difficult for that child to repeat a class, all right, because it's a matter of something you could come in and pay higher prices and all that, but you don't find that in public schools. In public schools, the standards still remain, just that there is a lot of neglect.
Ku kasance tare da mu yayin da muke tattaunawa kan yadda matsalolin cin hanci da rashawa ya dabaibaye ingancin ilimi a makarantun gwamnati da ke birnin tarayya Abuja da ma Najeriya a matakan ilimi daban-daban, tasirin ilimin ga 'ya'ya mata da maza da ma masu bukata ta musamman, mata da matasa ma ba a bar su a baya ba. Kasance da kafar AD4 TV Radio don ilmantuwa kan manufofin gwamnati, tsare-tsare da ma yadda matakan aiwatar da su ke tasiri ko akasin haka. Yin tankaɗe da riraya na daga cikin abubuwan da muke baiwa muhimmanci. Ku tabbatar kun kasance da tashar mu ta AD4 TV Radio a kowane mako don sauraron wannan shiri. Bisa ɗaukar nauyin AD4 TV Radio da cibiyar Wole Soyinka da ke tallafawa binciken injin da tallafawar gidauniyar Makata.
What's the philosophy of the country with regards to education? The Constitution is very clear about the fact that education, in fact, the Constitution makes education a right. Although they will tell us it's not justiciable, because there's a qualifier in the provisional constitution that says every child, every Nigerian has the right to education up to the tertiary level. But as at when feasible, as at when government can fund it. So they hide under that provision. And if you talk of extortion starts even from the public schools. Public schools, we hear governors talking about free education for their citizens. But we know that when you get there are different type of fee that parents are made to pay. So the extortion in the private schools, was something that the public school actually took the lead on. So the private schools are actually learning from the so-called public schools that are supposed to be free, at least for the first 9 years, minimally. So if you talk of that extortion, in order to properly situate it, we need to start by looking at it holistically and not make the private schools a scapegoat. I'm not saying they are not guilty, but the point I'm making is that those who taught them extortion are those who use our commonwealth. To run schools, they campaign on the basis of free education, accessible education, but what they do is to extort the general populace. After collecting our taxes, after collecting money from our various resources, they sit on around to make us pay for what the Constitution has guaranteed us to be a right. So there's extortion, but please let us look at it holistically and not just make the private schools sole scapegoats.
The private schools that have come to take over from the government, not every parent can afford the money. So therefore, they still have to leave their wards in the government schools. Sometimes, because of this issue of salaries for teachers, whatever, they go into extracurriculum business, engaging themselves outside the teaching curriculum that has been created in order for them to meet up. So I don't really blame them, because they have to, at least one must meet up the end. Responsibilities are growing every day. And basically, the economy is not helping the system. You want to go and get a school uniform for your child today, you know what it is. Books is a hell, not to talk of the textbooks. So, government has a very, very good role to play in education. Without government, education will be very hard for the common man.
There are schools that, how would I put it, they charge premium because they have a certain standard to maintain. Not necessarily in the education, as you have stated earlier, but the standard of elitism. I'm referring to several of these British American schools, French schools. There was actually a time in Nigeria where Montessori education was seen as being special for a few children, and schools would charge over the top to provide these forms of education. So really, regulation is something, because you look at it sometimes and you're like, why? I think it was on TikTok, I saw the bill of a playgroup child, and it was like 700k. I was like, why? All through my years of being educated, including the postgraduate studies I'm currently doing, I've never had to pay 700 grand for a semester or a session of work. So why are you charging somebody that? And they said it's a special school. So really, we need to rethink education as a whole. And when the word special school is being used, it shouldn't necessarily be in the connotation of your paying superior money. That's just elitism. And there are a lot of Nigerians that also they perpetuate their, let me put it that way, they like for their children to go to those kind of schools because it makes them feel special in some kind of way. They can just Oh, my child is at Cambridge, my child is at British American school, and all of those things, it continues to perpetuate that elitism because demand will always drive prices up.
The financial burden is taking its toll on parents. So much has been sacrificed already. Family outings reduced, meals, and even considering withdrawing their children. Investigations by AD4 TV reveals that Mrs. Johnson's experience was not an isolated incident. Numerous private schools in FCT engage in exploitative practices. Exorbitant tuition fees often increase without notice. Average increases is about 15 to 20% annually. Hidden charges for development fees 50% to 100,000 naira. Technology fees 20,000 to 50,000. Extracurricular fees 30 to 50,000 naira. Transportation fees 50 to 100,000. Meal fees 30 to 50,000 naira. Mandatory purchase of school materials and uniforms from selected vendors at an average cost of about 50 to 100,000 per set of a uniform. Convert fees for special programs. ICT 20 to 50,000. Sport 30 to 50,000. Earth 20 to 50,000. Threats of expulsion or withholding results for unpaid fees. Parents desperate for quality education are coerced into complying. Hence, schools capitalize on this desperation to prioritize profits over pedagogy.
Education is not a process of getting a meal ticket in the name of certificates. So that like I can get one job. No. Education is at the very epicenter of development of society. And any society that does not take education seriously, the way ought to prioritize, that society is heading for doom. We need to come together. First, government must understand the importance of education. Secondly, as stakeholders, as citizens, we must bring to bear the necessary pressure on the government to provide the resources that is needed. Government is number one provider that takes the lead in educating citizens. You don't outsource it to private orgs. No, tell me, is it the US, is it in Europe, is it in the UK, where they outsource that particular important duty of government to educate the citizens?
The consequences of this exploitation extend beyond financial strain. Emotional distress for children and parents, decreased academic performance due to stress and anxiety, limited access to education for lower-income families. Only 10% of FCT's population can afford private school fees, perpetuation of social inequality. Considering Nigeria's current economic reality, 40% increase in inflation rate, 33% unemployment rate, 63% of Nigerians live below the poverty line. It's time for change. The FCT government, education authorities, and civil society must intervene, regulate and checkmate the excesses of private schools, establish transparent, regulated fee structures, monitor and enforce accountability in private schools, provide affordable education alternatives, and support families affected by exploitation. Some parents who confided in AD4 TV radio reveal they would have opted for public schools considering the difficult and challenging economic realities, where even feeding is a big challenge, except that the public schools are quite a distance from their homes, and lack of transportation and insecurity are major threats.
If a child is trekking from far away to school, he must have encountered a lot of things. There are bad people. We have, cases of kidnapping is very high. That is insecurity problem we're having. We are battling with. But I know government is doing their best. But still, there's need to be done. There is a lot to be done. Then we also have issue of some students, because of far distance, they have to cross roads, which I have a cases of a student when he was trying to cross a road to he was hit by a car. So you can see if schools are located in his own community, he will not trek from farther distance to come to here. Schools should be located, where community can access education. So that danger is there. When you allow somebody to trek for maybe 3 kilometers, 1 kilometer to a school, it exposes him to danger, ranging from accident, ranging from insecurity, kidnapping issue, and so on and so forth. Some parents will even call when the time of closing, when school closes 2 o'clock. When they didn't see their child at home, they will now begin to call the head of the school. We didn't see my child. I don't know what happened. So all these things is as a result of distance. But if schools will be located in almost all the community, to reduce some of this danger.
A child that treks to school from a distance, what do you expect from the child? They cannot compose. Imagine how the sun is hot now. Trek come in the morning and trek go back in the afternoon. It's not going to be easy for that very child. Economically, things are not easy. Okay, now from here to Nyanya now, you see you are spending almost getting to 200. You give a child 200 naira yesterday morning to come. In the afternoon, we go back 400 naira. How much do you give to child for the feeding? All those ones are coming from where? Your pocket every day. You can imagine the child you send to school, you make him to trek under the sun, severely under a very serious sun, go and come every day, under the rain every day. It's not going to help the child. He cannot do more than his ability. That is just environment matters in anything we do, especially education. When there is a good, viable environment, children will do well. A student will do well. When every amenities and everything to support that education is available, they will do well.
As Mrs. Victoria's story echoes through the corridors of FCT's private schools, we remember that education is a right, not a luxury. Hence the need to protect the vulnerable and ensure that knowledge is not held hostage by greed.